What's going on, everybody? So today I'm going to talk to you guys about making a still life. And I think if you're an illustrator or you're a graphic designer or you're just a fine artist or a student of any kind or somebody who just considers art as a hobby or somebody who doesn't do art ever, a still life can be really fun and you can learn a lot of things from it. So while you've heard of the Tide Pod challenge, you've heard of the maybe the a couple years ago the ice water bucket challenge or whatever it was. I call this the Sequestered still life challenge. So while you're sitting at home doing nothing, do a still life. It's so much fun. So I'm going to talk to you about what I did. And first and foremost, you got to consider what you have lying around the house. And the orientation that you want to work at. So I know I want to work in my sketchbook. My sketchbook is this size paper, and I want to work horizontally. So when you set up your still life, keep in mind, are you going to go vertical or are you going to go horizontal? That's super important to how you set this up. So also, if you're a beginning artist or somebody who you're not good at drawing that well, pick something that's organic, something that is like a plant, a fruit, vegetable, something that you can look at and everybody's not going to know every single flaw. So like, for example, if you want to do a still life of an Xbox controller, if you mess up the drawing even a little tiny bit, everybody or a lot of people know what an Xbox controller should look like. And if you mess it up, it's going to be very evident. However, if you pick something like fruit, let's look at this. So this is what I was working with here. If you pick something like fruit, a lot of people are not going to know exactly, just by looking at your painting or your drawing, people are not going to know, if you mess this apple up, the shape of it a little bit, people won't recognize it. They won't know that the apple is actually this shape and not the shape that you drew it. Nobody will know. The flowers, like a house plant, something like that, people are not going to know if you mess up for the most part. But if you do something that's recognizable, your mistakes will be more evident. So let me talk to you guys real quick about the composition. So as I said, I'm working horizontally, this way to this way. And I want to set up my composition to keep that in mind. So I'm not going to place all my objects over here on one side of the page because it wouldn't make sense. I got to work all the way from this side of my paper to this side. So I want to position my objects accordingly. Also, you're going to want something in the background. So in my case, I have a beautiful pineapple here in the background. You're going to want something in the background, something in the middle ground, which I got the flower here. And you're going to want something in the foreground. In this case, this is a very expired red plum, and I've got this apple in the foreground. This red plum has seen better days. It's been in my house for like 265 days, and no one's eaten it. It doesn't look so bad in this picture, but it's pretty gross. So the other thing you want to consider is light source. So for me, in this situation, I have all the lights off in the room, and there's a window right above this fruit still life that I set up here. So natural light is coming in one way only, basically. So I think if you have just one light source, utilize it. So if you have a window, or if it's nighttime, you just have like one lamp on, that'll be good too. So keep in mind that light source. So you guys also, you want to make things overlap to create depth. So like I said, you have something in the background, you have something in the middle ground, you have something in the foreground here. But a lot of beginning artists will have like the pineapple over here, and then they'll have an apple over here, and they'll have the plum over here, and they'll have a flower over here. And it's just not interesting when you don't have things overlapping and you don't create depth. Like, you don't know if this flower is in front or behind this apple. You got to have things overlapping and have it overlapping in a way that's interesting. So foreground, middle ground, background. And if you're a beginner, try to pick something that's organic, and your mistakes will be less evident. Okay, so here we go. I am starting out super light. I got my still life in front of me. Now I don't like to personally work like with my paper up, uh, like on an easel or on an incline. So this is flat on the table, so I couldn't position the camera so that you could see the still life that was in front of me. But trust me, it's there. I'm working live from the still life, and I am starting super light. I am just getting the basic shapes down, and I'm not worried about any tiny detail. I know that when I was in high school, I used to start on one side of the paper and then do every single detail all the way over to the other side of the paper. And that's just not the way to do it, because if you make a mistake and if you realize, oh, I drew that too small or I drew that too big, and then you have spent like hours rendering one little area, you have to undo all that. So get those basic shapes down. So I got the basic shapes of the fruit and the flower there, and now I'm going in and getting the basic shape of the shadows. So once I have the basic shapes outlined, now I can go in and start to worry a little bit about the detailing and what's taking place inside of these big shapes. So really, I just started with the outlines first, and then once all that's in place, now I can go inside and work on the details of what's happening inside. So the most complicated thing I have here is this pineapple in the background. And there's lots of these hexagonal shapes back there. But really, you also have to think about what's the focal point of your picture. Like, what do you really want to focus in on? You don't have to paint or draw everything in complete detail. You can choose a focal point. So here's my still life as a reminder. And for me, I don't want the focal point to be the pineapple. I want the focal point to be the apple and the red plum there in the foreground. Like, that's what the viewer should be looking at first. The pineapple, it's still there. I still have to draw and paint it a little bit. But I don't have to work as hard on it, I don't think, because it's in the background. It's not as important as what's in the foreground in this particular still life. So I'm going to keep that pineapple back there really loose, even though it's the most detailed thing on there, really, because there's all those complicated shapes involved. But I'm going to spend most of my time working on the plum and the apple. So now, once I have all the stuff in place, all the lines, what I think is correct, now I'm going to start shading. And you can just keep this as a drawing, really. You don't have to paint it, because you can push a drawing really, really far. I decided that I'm going to keep going past a drawing. I'm going to turn it into a painting. But right now I'm just getting the basic shadow shapes down. Like, I want to understand what areas are dark and what areas are light. Now this stage is pretty important because, honestly, the least important thing in a painting really is color. I mean, color makes it look cool and it's really awesome, I think. But it's really not as important as getting the value down. So the darkness and the lightness of your shadows and your highlights and everything in between. So I'm pushing the shadows right now and the values, and I'm getting those all working out for me. So I've also realized that there's lots of stopping points along the way. Like, you could only do a drawing. Like, if you just have pencils laying around, you don't have paint, that's okay. Just keep it going with the shading, and this could be almost done right now as I'm working on it. Like, I could just say, this is a finished drawing. Yeah, it's not quite finished right now. I'm just kind of getting the basics down of shadows and highlights and midtones. But really, I could be done soon. But I decided I want to push this into a painting. So I'm just going to get the basics down in terms of a drawing. And then I will fill in most of my information when I do my painting. So as a reminder, here's my still life. It's still sitting in front of me. It's still there. And now I've decided I'm going to go in and paint this. So I have acrylic paints, and I'm just using it super, super thin. And this is the scariest part for a lot of you guys, I just went over the entire thing with a big wash of burnt sienna paint, and that might make some of you panic, but it's just to get like a base down, so I'm not working on white. When you work on white, it just, for me, it's like a mental thing where I'm like, ugh, I just gotta want to get paint over the whole thing and just get the whole thing done. So I'm working in acrylic, as I said. Now I'm going in with I'm using a lot of water with this, by the way. So I'm using like a diluted acrylic paint, and now I'm just trying to get the shadow shapes in there. Just like with my sketch and my drawing, I did the values. So now I'm just trying to repeat that in actual paint. I'm trying to get those values in there, those shadow shapes. And when I'm working, I want it to be done at all points. So like I said before, this could be done right now, and it'd be fine. It'd be a still life. It'll be a nice value study, a nice wash of paint. I don't want it to be done right now, personally, but it could be. Like this could be it. So that's another stopping point right there. You could stop, but right now I want to keep going with color. So now I'm going to start going in with actual color. And I got the pineapple in the background. It's obviously greeny, browny, yellowish color, and I'm working in there with. But as I said before, I want to keep that pineapple back there relatively loose because I don't want that to be my focal point. I want it to be there, I want it to be painted, but I don't want to work on it as much as I'm working on the other things in my drawing, like the apple and the red plum. That's my focal point. So again, I'm going to be spending most of my painting time on those two areas in the front. And the least amount of time on that pineapple and what's going on in the background. Maybe the table. You definitely don't want to spend a lot of time on the table. A lot of beginning artists want to render every single detail of every single thing. You don't need to do it. Just pick one thing to really focus on. You don't have to do everything. So here it is again. Here's my still life, still there, still working on it. And then there's a point here where I realized I do not have any white acrylic paint left in my house. So I had to switch over to oils, and now I'm working in oils on top of my acrylic painting. And I'm working a little bit more opaque now. So now I'm not diluting the paint. So I'm not using water, or in this case, I'm not using turpentine to dilute it. I'm working pretty thickly with my oil paint. And I'm really trying to get the color in there now, and I'm trying to get the details in that apple and in that red plum. But still, I'm working a lot around the canvas. I'm not just staying in one area. I'm moving around at all times because, as I said before, I want this painting to be done. Like right now, I could stop and it'd be done. Whenever I'm working, I want it to be able to stop and it'd be finished. So it could be finished right now, but it's not because I want to keep going. As I said, now I'm really noodling in with that apple. And making sure it's thebomb.com. Make sure that apple is more detailed than anything, and that red plum there. And now I'm slowing down. This is actual speed that I'm painting at. I'm doing a lot of thinking. This was fast forwarded 4,000 times the speed of my actual painting. So this is me actually painting in real time. And this is my last two strokes. Shadow, make it super dark under there, and shadow under there. And now I am finished. And this is my setup as I was painting. The still life's in front of me. I got my computer there for no reason, I guess. But there's my paints. And this is my final still life. So I hope you learned something today, everybody. And I challenge you to do the Sequestered Still Life Challenge while you're sitting at home. Best of luck to all of you. Peace out, everybody. Did you like this video? I hope you did. If you did, you can go over to my Patreon page and you're going to see over 100 more videos just like this one. And you're also going to earn some free art prints just by supporting me.